pleasure to welcome Louise Richards this morning as our first keynote. I'm sure Louise needs very little introduction. You have her synopsis of her biography in your pack, but it gives me great pleasure because we've known each other since the mid-1980s, and that rather ages us, so don't do the maths, but we both arrived in this region at more or less the same time, myself to what was then Coventry Centre for the Performing Arts, and Louise to what was then New Midlands Dance. And we're going to hear in a moment about this extraordinary story, and it is an extraordinary story in a number of ways, about Motionhouse. And it's not least because of the personalities, the strengths, the talents, the tenacity, the resilience of the directors, Louise with her partner Kevin Finnan. And I think those of us who've been working in this region for some time will look at Motionhouse and think what an extraordinary example they are for a company that has sustained themselves through all of the various challenging periods that we've had in the last 2-3 decades, and is a thriving performance company. And I suppose we also ought to thank Leamington Spa for having the confidence, in a way, to support one of the only very few regional dance companies, or dance theatre performance companies. So we're going to hear about Louise's fabulous journey so far, many, many more years ahead as well. They're celebrating their 26th anniversary, I think it is.
It was 26 years this
26 this year, which is extraordinary. After Louise's presentation, there'll be time for questions, so we'll hand the floor over to you. So as you listen, do prepare some questions because there will be time at the end. Louise, thank you.
Thank you. So, the first thing I want to do is say thank you very much for inviting me to speak to this wonderful room of creative people. I gather that we have amongst us people who are very well established on their journeys, people who are new to the industry, to the sector, to the arts, the creative industries, and also people who maybe have not yet quite started on their journeys. But I think a common theme probably holds us all together. We're passionate, we're committed, and most of all, we're creative. And I would suggest that the longer-term challenge is how to hang on to those qualities as we wrestle with the business of running a creative business. I was asked to talk about Motionhouse, a company I co-founded in 1988 in Leamington Spa, having danced for New Midlands Dance, which was then the regional dance company for the Midlands. Myself and Kevin Finnan, in that kind of youthful, determined way one might be when we're very young, decided we could do things better. We had things to say. We felt very passionate, actually. We felt very, very passionate about making a particular type of work that we had stuff we wanted to say, we had places we wanted to take it. We really believed that dance could be accessible, it could be for anybody, that it didn't need to be seen as elitist, it didn't need to be a narrow art form that only certain people could be engaged with. So we had big, big, big ideas. We wanted to create work that was accessible. We wanted to blend many art forms in a total performance. And we wanted to combine that with education work. So lots and lots of things. We weren't at that point thinking long term. We certainly weren't imagining that 26 years later we'd still be here. We were simply doing it because we cared, because we were young, because we wanted to. I think it's important to say, before I sort of plough on with my journey, that there's no golden rule, one size fits all or magic ticket. I think that the most important thing is to know what you care about. And as you embark on your journey, just try and hang on to that passion, commitment and creativity, no matter what is thrown at you. Because that's, after all, what makes us who we are. Here we are. It's kind of weird to see these pictures. Any of you that know us now, it's probably quite weird to see these pictures. There's another one. Thank you. So 1988. We were very fortunate. At the time, which was then the days of regional arts associations, there was no large national arts council, one national organisation. The West Midlands Regional Arts Association, at the time, were able to give out these wonderful things called encouragement grants. £5,000 to encourage you. I mean, God, imagine it now. We were given an encouragement grant. We were fortunate the Regional Arts Association liked the look of the work we've been doing with New Midlands Dance, wanted us to stay in the region, gave us this opportunity. And we also benefited, and I hate to name the person who steered this, but we benefited from Margaret Thatcher's enterprise allowance. £40 a week for startups, business startups. I don't think she ever imagined that that £40 a week would be going towards a dance company. It was much more designed, obviously, for far more kind of, in her eyes, commercially enterprising companies. But with that £40 a week and our £5,000 encouragement grant, we started Motionhouse. We very, very quickly secured an incredible opportunity. Southern Arts, another regional arts association, had decided to pilot this incredible new initiative, this new idea of a dance in schools project, a dance and education project. It was very new, big pilot, and had relatively large sums of money attached to it. This was our first opportunity, and opportunity is a word I'm going to use a lot over the course of the next few minutes. This opportunity was there. We managed to pitch, based on our existing track record of strong work in schools, to secure this grant, which really the Arts Association had only got as far as thinking we want some dance to happen in schools. We knew we wanted to make dance happen in schools, but we also wanted to make dances. So creativity was at the root of our response to that opportunity. And in responding to that project, we made our very first performance work, a piece called A Curious Day. With that show, which we toured to schools, we also managed to penetrate in a very small scale, some venues. We managed to actually get a gig in the Purcell Rooms in London South Bank, because in making that show, we didn't make a kids' show, we made a show that was for audiences, for all audiences, whether that be children, whether that be OAPs, whether that be people from all cultures. We made a show that we felt the vast majority of people might find engaging, entertaining, and accessible. Certainly back then, accessibility was a really dirty word. I think it's an incredibly important word, and it's at the root of everything that we do, that we did, and we continue to plan to do. I think what was important was that we responded to that opportunity by creating a resource for ourselves, a resource that would allow us to deliver exactly what those funders wanted, but also to give us something which we could then run with and start to build our own programme of activity around. We took every opportunity to build our programme around that performance. We delivered a huge amount of education work, training workshops, and we worked in a range of contexts, including prisons. From the start, we used every single project to work on making work. So in schools, yes, we taught skills, but we also worked on choreography, we worked on creative ideas. We were building our vocabulary, and we were exploring through working creatively with our partners and with our participants. We also, at the same time, were right from the very beginning determined that we wouldn't just make work that would be seen in a theatre context, that by definition would be for a very narrow audience. So that work that was made in schools, we also extrapolated on, found other opportunities to work in sites and spaces outside the norm, focusing on that word, accessibility. So not just for ticket-buying theatre-goers. Without ever using the terminology or actually ever making a conscious decision, we were diversifying our offer right from the very beginning, instinctively paving the way for weathering some pretty difficult times that were to come. We were lucky because we had a range of skills and a range of contexts in which to work. So those things stood us in good stead for surviving the whims of policymakers, art form gatekeepers, fashion, and of course, the ups and downs of funding. We were really excited to explore a range of projects, playing with the placing of our work, and that began the process that to this day is at the heart of our success. To think laterally about where our work might go, why it might go there, and for whom it might be seen. We were fortunate in being a two-person, really passionate, creative team with skills between us encompassing creation of work, performance and teaching, but also in Kevin, we had a visionary artist, and in me, a natural manager with a strong sense of organisation and an instinctive understanding of business. The merging of those skills with our shared passion and really dogged belief in our work allowed us to persuade an enormous body of people that our work had value. And in that simple fact, we laid the foundations for a strong and lasting business. Within 2 years, what had started as a partnership with that enterprise allowance was developed into a limited company with charitable status. We took on a board of directors. We by then were in receipt of some public funding, so of course we needed to be accountable. The company was growing, and by the early 90s, we were employing 2 to 4 other dancers. We were playing with the notion of dance, working with visual and other artists, and creating theatre using simple sets and props. It wasn't easy. We were outside London, the Holy Grail, the place everybody flocked to. People asked, why? Why Leamington? We were doing unusual things. We were outside the norm. We weren't doing pure dance in leotards. And we weren't part of the very cliquey dance world that existed at the time. But we were outside London. We were doing unusual things, and we weren't part of the cliquey dance world. Know your negatives and make them your positives. I think we all have to spin our situation all of the time. And those very things which appeared negatives, appeared weird, made us stand out and formed our original USP. But the need to keep dancers, even with the combination of education and performance work in those early days, was really hard. Even when we'd sustained work for a few years and we were employing 4 dancers, sometimes 5 dancers, we could only employ them for 12, sometimes 15 weeks a year. And then we would lose them. They would flock back to London. Why stay here? Why stay in Leamington? We sort of struggled on like that for several years. And then our greatest opportunity, which has had the most profound effect on our journey ever since, came in the form of our first major financial nightmare. At the time, as I said, there was no national arts body. We were dealing with our regional arts office, and we were also dealing with the National Arts Office. And we'd arrived at a point where we were receiving 50% of our funding from each on a year-by-year basis. So it was never secure, but it had been happening quite routinely. And as one does, we began to settle into the fact that this was now our norm. We suffered a 50% cut in 1999. The National Office decided that for 1 year they wouldn't give us any money. But the region carried on. They wanted to support us. They were committed to supporting our work. By then, we were making work for 5 or 6 performers. We were employing people. We had a passion and a commitment, but we also had responsibility. We'd built this company, and to have the rug pulled out from underneath us was devastating. Around us, companies who were receiving the same news, the same information, were falling by the wayside. We had to have a rethink. We needed to downsize to survive. We had to really think about what we could do and how we might do it. We were determined that we wouldn't fall by the wayside. We saw an opening in the rural sector. Openings. It's a bit of a theme. I think that if you're going to manage and sustain a creative endeavour, you've got to look for those openings. At the time, the rural sector was really quite strong. Still is. It was growing in profile. There was a network of rural agencies touring work across the country. But there was absolutely no dance. It was all theatre. So we saw an opening. We created a piece called Atomic, a 3-hander with a small set, which we designed and developed in collaboration with our local regional rural touring agency. It was made so it could tour to village halls. It was made so that the audience could be on all 4 sides. It was made so it wouldn't need technical support because it was touring to village halls. It was a revelation. We went on to do 130 performances of Atomic in its first year. It was fleet of foot with only 3 people. It went into a small van. And although it started as a rural touring show, we quickly realised that actually what we had was something that didn't have to just be constrained to rural. We'd coined the term mini-scale and started to take it wherever we felt we could, persuading people that if they had a little space, smaller than small scale, mini-scale, we could do Atomic. We realised we had something truly transferable. It ended up going to schools, library foyers, shopping centres, and ironically, small theatres. We realised that it actually didn't have to be mini-scale. We realised that if you do a piece of work that can be seen on 4 sides, your audience can go back as far as you're able to, command the audience. So we changed the term mini-scale to multi-scale. The work carried on selling. It went all over the place. But the thing that was really important about it was that it was seen in the public arena constantly. It wasn't a theatre show. Yes, theatres booked it, bizarrely, but it was about accessible work in the public arena. It allowed us to offer work for a large part of the year, which started to help us to broach that problem of holding onto our dancers. And around it, we continued to build our education work. People saw us, people that wouldn't have otherwise seen dance or even felt they were interested, saw us in their local shopping centres, saw us in their schools. Longer dancer contracts were starting to happen, but it still wasn't enough. This multi-scale notion continued for us for 3 shows. After Atomic, we made a production called Fearless, taking now this multi-scale thing, taking real ownership of this as a term, selling it as such, selling it to a range of wacky places, a range of wacky partners where dance didn't go. This is us performing in Birmingham city centre. At the time, there was no dance on the streets. It just wasn't what people did. It continued the model of making a piece of work that we could take anywhere. We developed the idea of having a set that was the stage, that as long as we had a footprint big enough that we could plonk the set down, we could perform. We could go anywhere. We realised we could literally plonk our shows in any environment, and with that, huge numbers of doors and gateways opened. We even took our next show, Volatile, into a maximum security prison, which was an entertaining endeavour. Volatile also, this is a Volatile picture, was the first show in which we started to explore aerial work. Those of you that know the company's work now, we use an awful lot of circus skills combined with dance in order to create our work. The opportunity to integrate aerial came in the same model. In establishing a set that was a stage, we realised that we could build all the technical environment and the aerial rigging into that set as well. So we started to make very simple aerial ideas and integrate them into our shows. We could totally control our world. It was an incredible freedom. We didn't have the problem of spacing into venues or worrying about whether there was a rigging point. We discovered not just a whole new range and diverse series of contexts for our work, but we discovered a new freedom in being able to create work that didn't have to be contained through the restrictions of the spaces we were going to. By placing our work outside and not in theatres and in a range of public places, we were working in incredibly close proximity to our audiences. We could see the whites of their eyes, we could see what they were feeling, and most importantly, if they didn't like it, they could walk away. They weren't in a theatre, they didn't have to be polite. So we learned a huge amount about the nature of our work, about accessibility, about what does make dance accessible, what's needed, what are the key ingredients to hold an audience and to make them come back for more. With Volatile, we were stretching our own model. We were too big for that multi-scale term we'd come up with. We were starting to get a lot more demand from theatres, and what dance company doesn't want to tour to theatres? So we wanted to respond to that demand, but we didn't want to lose our connection, these new connections we'd made with audiences on a grassroots level. We didn't want to lose the relationships we'd made with our smaller partners, these strong partnerships with rural agencies, small venues and non-arts organisations like town centre managers. In the same way that the rural market had been an opportunity when we lost our funding in 1999, in the early 2000s, the word on everybody's lips was audience development. It was the holy grail that everybody had to seek to deliver. Funding was available, a key point. And we realised that, again, without ever calling it that, we were developing audiences by taking our work where we were taking it. That audience development funding strand enabled us to develop another new model, a new model that at the time we called satellites. We wanted to continue to create our work in theatres, but not wanting to lose the connection with people in public spaces, we developed small outdoor shows that could be seen in the locality of a venue, at the time designed to drive audiences to our theatre show. We quickly realised, though, that they themselves were of enormous import and of enormous impact. These short, easy-to-deliver performances were of just as much value as the work in theatres. We therefore started to consciously make small pieces of work to run parallel to our theatre work. This is Chaser that we made in 2005. Again, I think it's important just to stop for a minute and think about transferability. What we had started off by thinking, what can we do for audience development? The idea of the satellites had been, how do you get people through the theatre door that don't normally come into the theatre? How do you get them to see the work? I was always really passionate in the belief that if people saw what we did, they would love it. They would just love it. A little bit big-headed, probably. But I felt that if we could put our work outside, it would drive people through the theatre doors. In experimenting with that idea, we realised that dance itself in the streets in these small ways was really, really important, an incredible opportunity. And actually, we realised that we could transfer this idea into the festival market. It's still relatively youthful here, but even then in the early 2000s, the European festival circuit was incredibly strong. In every town, every small village, there's a summer festival of outdoor performance work. We did research. We went and visited these festivals. We realised that they were an incredibly strong and vibrant market for our work, but that there was absolutely no dance. So in 2008, we created, especially for that market, a piece called Underground, which we targeted festivals. We targeted festivals in Europe and we targeted festivals at home. Interestingly, it was our venue partners who helped us to commission this work, because at the same time, they were starting to see that there was scope in doing a range of programming around their main house shows. What had previously been an incredibly dead touring time for us and had been the barrier to us in being able to employ our dancers year-round, the summer, now became an incredibly busy time for us, an incredibly packed touring opportunity, and of course an earning opportunity. This is Cascade, made in 2010, by which time we were moving to almost year-round activity. Our work in theatres was still touring within theatre seasons, spring and autumn, and our festival work in the summertime. From 2010, engagement became the word on everybody's lips. Audiences, data, and of course, in more recent years, a huge emphasis on arts in areas of low engagement. Art for everyone, of course. Parallel to that, there's been a very strong agenda within local authorities about community ownership, community pride. So we started to realise there was yet another strategic application of our work. We applied to the Strategic Touring Fund set up for work in areas of low engagement, and in 2013 made Captive, a piece of work that toured extensively in 2013 and 14. And we did a detailed and intensive audience research project alongside it. And I'm delighted to say 100% of people who saw it would come again, which is a rather fabulous statistic. I think the important thing about Captive is that it delivered exactly what the funders wanted, and the research backed that up. 25% of our audiences had never seen dance before. 25% of our audiences had never seen any outdoor performance. And 50% of our tour went into areas where there was previously no arts at all. So we delivered what the funders wanted, but at the same time, it gave us another opportunity to build our repertoire. It gave us another opportunity for income generation. And that piece, in the same way that the original piece made for Southern Arts schools, transferred from schools to theatres, Captive, made for those areas of low engagement, tours to huge high-profile international festivals. So the same principle is at play. It's about making the same work, understanding your work and thinking about accessibility. You can transfer that work to a whole range of places and spaces and opportunities. Meanwhile, our theatre work has been changing since Atomic, since we managed to get back into venues with Volatile, and subsequently through the festival work. As I said, performing outside, you can see the audience's eyes, you can see the whites of their eyes, you know what they're thinking, and you learn a huge amount about yourself as a performer, yourself as a creator, when your work is exposed to that degree. Again, accessibility, and for us, dynamism. Dynamism is vital to our work, a dynamic engagement with the audience, taking them on a journey, a visual treat. The set as a stage has continued to be fundamental to the work that we deliver, so that we can continue to control that world and we can push the boundaries of what that world is further and further. allowing for greater experimentation. This has allowed us to develop our form with sophisticated use of aerial and other circus skills and crazy sets, including quarter pipes. The set for Scattered is a quarter pipe, and slatted screens, and at the same time to create visual magic through the use of film. By containing our world, we reduce the variables and give ourselves greater control in the varied spaces that we tour to, so therefore greater artistry. We can make the work we believe in. We can build our work with our partnership with venues and loyalty in our audiences through the mixed offer that we're now able to field. I mentioned earlier on that right from the beginning we had an interest in unusual sites and spaces, and that continued. The background to all of this was still doing work in unusual sites and spaces. We were doing work in art galleries, places like the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, in disused churches, and even Copenhagen Police Headquarters. We were drawing on our education experience, and our work in those contexts often involved hundreds of community performers. In 2004, we created a project called The Road to the Beach. Once again, there was a timely opportunity. It was the era of creative partnerships, government and Arts Council investment in creative educational arts. And through creative partnerships funding, we created a performance involving 800 local people, mainly children, in a participatory project that spanned 6 weeks. We created a two-hour-long promenade performance on Watergate Bay in Cornwall. Watergate Bay is a tidal beach, so the 2 hours, the show really had to finish because the tide had disappeared by the end of the 2 hours. There's a little bit of a story behind that project, which again I think is really pertinent and resonant. The show was called Road to the Beach, and the reason it was called that was we were shocked to discover that the vast majority of children who live in Cornwall had never been to the beach. Those who live on the coast, yes, but the majority of them living in the potteries and the mining villages in the inner parts of Cornwall had literally never been to the beach. So we started by going into the schools and talking to them about what the beach might mean to them. Hence, we had scenes about pirates, we had scenes about shells, we had scenes about surfing. We had all sorts of wonderful and crazy things, inspired by the children's vision of what a beach might include. They ranged in age from little tiny people through to professionals. We had a wonderful group of 100 boys who did a dance about the surf in white. And the culmination of this 2-hour performance was something called machine dance. It was our first experimentation with dancing with diggers. For us, the rationale behind that was to do with the way that the landscape is formed by the sea and the way that man then reinterprets the landscape. Fabulous. We've got so many great images of this show. We saw the potential in machine dance. We realised that, yes, it was a brilliant culmination to a spectacular 2-hour promenade show, but surely we could do more with it. And there followed in 2005 and 2006 2 large events in London with machine dance as their centrepiece. But, machine dances, diggers, dancers, it was all a bit wacky. We knew we weren't yet done. We needed to find other opportunities for it. And we learnt about a corporate commercial opportunity, a whole other market for us. The Bull Ring was developing the Spicewell Street restaurant area that many of you are probably familiar with, and they wanted to commission a piece of public art. They had in mind some kind of installation, or I think a light sculpture at one point they were discussing. But I managed to persuade them that actually what they needed was some performance. And what I suggested to them was that they might need 2 performances. Traditionally, when a new building site starts, they have a breaking of the ground, which is usually a bloke in a hard hat cutting a ribbon. But this was our breaking the ground. We did a 2-dancer, 1-digger performance to celebrate the beginning of the process of build. And at the end of the construction period, we performed traction with 3 dancers and 6 diggers to open and launch the Spicewell Street development. It was a corporate opportunity, another relationship, another transferable use of our skills and our repertoire. At the same time, maximising our profile and again building new audiences. By pulling in programmers that we'd been working with our outdoor festival work, remember, that I mentioned just now, We brought them along to see this because, again, we could see the potential for this work to go to those outdoor festivals. And in 2013, we opened the Marseille Provence Capital of Culture celebrations with a performance of Traction on the beach in Marseille to 16,000 people. Just show you a couple of these because they're such great pictures. This year, we also did Traction in Fleetwood, which is near Blackpool, for something called Tram Sunday, which is part of their Festival of Transport. We continue to look for opportunities and transferable chances to show our work. And who knows where next. We've had approaches from as far afield as Calgary, so I sincerely hope that Traction will live long in our repertoire. Working at scale has become quite a passionate interest for us. And like all artists, we look for opportunities. We look for opportunities to do things that are normally outside the scope of what we can deliver. And I think we would probably all be aware that the Cultural Olympiad presented a vast array of opportunity. We tried for the Artist the Lead project, didn't manage it. We tried for several of the other funding streams over the course of that 2008 to 12 and weren't successful. But we finally were successful and secured a once-in-a-lifetime project, the opportunity to open the London 2012 Festival in the Midlands with a huge performance called The Voyage. It allowed us to take the model of the set as a stage to a crazy new level, creating a ship in the middle of Birmingham city centre. But before I go into that, this picture is just a handful of the 130 young people that performed within The Voyage. We saw it not just as an opportunity for ourselves, but as another opportunity to develop the idea of participatory performance and work with young people across the region in this incredible scaled opportunity. This is actually us rehearsing at the NEC, which was the only place big enough to accommodate the rehearsals. This is The Voyage in performance. And just to give you a sense, if you didn't see it, that's the ship. The reason we were at the NEC was because 2012 had the most god-awful weather. We were performing at the end of June. It was an outdoor show, and we couldn't rehearse outside because the weather was so awful, plus we had nowhere to put that. It didn't even fit in the NEC. We could only rehearse with the sort of top half, and we only ever actually rehearsed on the final thing in the last 3 days when we were in Victoria Square. Anyway, so we built this ship in Victoria Square, built excitement, people walking past with their Starbucks on the way to the office, wondering what on earth was going on. Fantastic audience development opportunity, building a ship, people asking what's going on. And 15,000 people came and saw it over 3 nights. Not just ourselves, but also performers from Legs on the Wall, an aerial company from Sydney, the 130 dancing cast, plus a marching band and choirs, all produced in partnership with Birmingham Hippodrome. The thing about The Voyage again, though, was that as well as taking to a ridiculous size this idea of the set as the stage and controlling our environment, it gave us a really large-scale opportunity to develop our work with film. We were able to use film and video mapping in order to take our audiences on what I still feel was an incredibly magical journey. So much so I want to show you a little film, but I'm going to have to wrestle with the laptop to do that, so keep your fingers crossed that this works. It's just a little short summary film, but I think it's gorgeous, and I hope you will too. back to me talking, I'm afraid. I know there's a panel today about working internationally. And for us, that has become a central plank of our business model. With the reductions in funding, the UK sector is cut to harsher and harsher degrees, and therefore has an ever-reducing capacity to pay for companies like ourselves. Doesn't mean we don't do it, it just means we have to find other ways of delivering our programme to subsidise and supplement it. Touring is at the very, very heart of our rationale. It's our artistic core around which everything else operates and where we truly develop our art. So we strive to protect it. With no financial return here, our solution has been international touring, which, whilst not yet lucrative, does subsidise our work at home. Our festival pieces have been regularly going to European festivals since 2008. But we hadn't made any headway with our theatre work, our work which was touring on the middle scale in this country. And that was primarily, historically, because of people, gatekeepers, very few people in London who took it upon themselves to be the arbiters of taste and the arbiters of what international promoters may or may not choose to see and therefore book, which had always infuriated me. Always, because, remember, I had that passionate belief that if people saw the work, they'd love it. And to me, that extended to international promoters as well. And it was eternally frustrating for many years of Motionhouse's life that we never got the opportunity to show our work to international promoters. And then came YouTube, the great equalizer. I really mean that. We put our work up on YouTube. It meant that anybody could see it. We'd always had great visuals and we'd always had great film. And by putting our work up on YouTube, of course, we were playing to a global audience. We were naive, we didn't know how to kind of control that global audience in the way they were watching our work. But we were able to put it up there, and Scattered, as a result of YouTube, has become a global hit. It opened in this country in 2009, toured here for 2009, 10 and 11, and now tours only internationally to some extraordinary places. It was the first show to go out on those online channels. The requests came in. I think the physical and visual nature of our work just captured the imagination of people around the world. Our work was suited to the digital realm. Those very first invitations came from Romania and Macau, two, you can get more contrasting countries to go to. One involved 6 days of driving and bribes at the border. The other one was our first experience of long-haul freighting of sets. So we had some pretty major learning curves to do very, very quickly. Then we got a call from IMG, International Management Group. A lot of people have heard of IMG in relation to sports, but they also have IMG artists. And we got a call from New York, which I thought was a prank call. I really thought it was a prank call. For several minutes, I thought it was somebody pulling my leg when this very American woman was telling me she'd seen our work on YouTube and she'd like us to tour the States. Luckily, I realised before I hung up on her that she was honest and telling the truth, and she really did. Scattered has subsequently toured twice to the States. Broken, our more recent production, will go there next year. We're now represented by IMG in 3 of their global offices, one in New York, one in Singapore representing Asia Pacific, and one in Germany, the European office. And our work is touring globally. It's had a massive impact on our capacity. We had absolutely no idea what we were taking on when we started to do this international touring, because the size of the company hasn't increased. But we've just had to continuously evolve our methodology in order to cope. But at the core, dating right back to 1988, remain the same core things: the creation of exciting, accessible work, reaching out to audiences and partners and seizing opportunities, creating transferable work. Broken, our most recent production, which opened in 2013 and has toured extensively in 13 and 14, is now also going out internationally. At the same time, we still deliver that festival work. We still do that small-scale work out in public places, shopping centres. The parallel pillars of our offer support the company on every level, creatively, developmentally and financially. Our jigsaw of activity allows us to maintain a core company of absolutely brilliant dancers. We have a strong repertoire currently of 7 productions, and we are able to respond to opportunities through the flexibility of our work, our varying and scalable offer, our mixed programme, and the combination of performance and participation, all of which have been there since the very, very early days. At our heart is a strong connection to our audiences. It's the thing that we hold most dear. And we know our work speaks to a very wide population, which gives our work resonance and relevance. Projects in the pipeline for us include work with library services, local authorities and National Trust. We continue to look always for new partnerships whilst still nurturing our existing partnerships. It's challenging for us, just like it is for everybody. Fundraising is an eternal struggle, but we've become really good at diversification of our income strands, another key Arts Council agenda. We can give scalable responses to requests from a range of existing and new partners, drawing on that repertoire of 7 shows and our educational abilities. Our challenge is our capacity. We can't do everything, so we must constantly weigh up the different projects and opportunities, balancing our art and income generation, maintaining our integrity and our vision. We're always delivering the now to the best of our ability, always striving for excellence, but at the same time staying ahead and thinking about what next. What's the next opportunity? What's the next agenda that we can tie into, that we can deliver against? I don't think any of this would work, certainly for me, and probably not for you, without that passion, commitment, and creativity. Make sure that you hang on to those things and use those things to build partnerships. Invest in partnerships. Be open to opportunity. Recognise opportunities and partners when they're somewhere out in your peripheral vision. Don't wait for them to be right in front of you or the moment's gone. Think laterally. Approach projects from a range of angles. Know your strengths and exploit them. Think ahead, but always maintain your passion and your creativity. For me, those words encapsulate the very spirit of Motionhouse, and I want to just finish with another little film, which is probably going to judder as well, but I hope you'll bear with it. It's a short film about Broken. It's, for me, it just sums up everything about Motionhouse. It's the reason we do what we do. Audiences love it, promoters love it, and most of all, we love it. I hope you will too.
very, very much indeed, Louise.
My pleasure.
A wonderful opening to the day. What a fantastic journey through not only Louise's journey so far in the company, but it feels like we got a wonderful kind of history lesson on the sort of different arts agendas and funding initiatives as they developed through time. And that was extraordinarily well done. So thank you so much, Louise. So can we have a couple of questions while we're doing the boot up? Has anybody got a question they want to ask? I can't see a hand. Oh, maybe I'll start then and ask a rather a question which occurred to me when we were looking at the wonderful digger works. Do you get commercial sponsorship? Because I couldn't help but notice JCB were getting a lot out of that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? When we did Marseille Provence, they actually got a huge picture in the Times. The article was talking about they'd commissioned a stained glass window or something to celebrate some JCB anniversary. But clearly that made a boring picture, so the Times instead took, in fact, a picture of the diggers sort of like that. So they were getting incredible promotion out of it. I'd got a really long way with JCB in terms of working with them. They actually have a dancing digger troupe. And we'd persuaded them that actually what they needed was for us to choreograph and re-envisage their dancing diggers. Yeah, got a very long way down the line with them. Got a huge number of, I suppose, middle management on the side, including events and marketing and sales, who all liked this idea. We even got as far as doing some R&D at their Staffordshire plant, where we went and played with diggers. But we fell foul of the sort of inner workings of the various levels of probably the slightly lower down management who got very, very nervous about health and safety. And therefore there was all sorts of internal dynamics about how they didn't know whether or not they wanted to do this, and therefore JCB kind of ran scared. We carried on doing the work, but we couldn't get them to the point where they would actually partner with us. And then interestingly, we did a project, Kevin, artistic director of Motionhouse, choreographed the Paralympic opening ceremony. And he got to know David Toole, who you may know, who's a very high-profile disabled dancer, and another disabled dancer, Welly O'Brien. And we started working on another digger dance with a JCB and these two profoundly disabled artists. And interestingly, JCB got interested in that. And so since then, it's a bit of a softly approach, but for the performance we did in Fleetwood for the Tram Sunday Transport Festival, they gave us the diggers. Now that might not sound like much, but it's enormous. Hiring diggers, transporting diggers and filling diggers up with fuel costs an unbelievable amount of money. So that was quite a big deal.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if we should have a couple of questions and then see
the
film
absolutely.
as
I'm just
the
going to make sure
finale
that,
moment.
well, we don't even know if it'll work.
We have
so
a question here.
Yeah,
a couple of hands up there. So at the front, should we come to the front with the mic?
The Arts Council have just announced that they're going to do more funding outside the M25. I wondered if you had any more information on what exactly that means.
No, not me personally. I mean, I think that it's widely acknowledged that the majority of the funding goes into London. And I think, to be fair, I think with the national portfolio round that has been announced for 2015 to 18, there is a small percentage more funding going outside the capital and into the regions. They're also, through the Theatres Tax Relief initiative, encouraging theatre work to tour outside London. But I think we're a long way off having egalitarian share of the resources in the region, if I'm absolutely honest with you.
There's one last hand up, just here.
You said you were always working on projects like now, but also new projects.
Yeah.
Now, what was the sort of percentage of your time you sort of...
Me personally or the company?
Well, the company?
The fact is you have to be doing both, because otherwise when now stops, you've got nothing. So we're actually always working at a range of different sort of forward projections. So we're working now on what we're going to be doing in 2018 on one level. Obviously, we're delivering what we're doing now, and more imminently, we're setting in train the tour that will happen early next year. But you have to be able to always be thinking. It's a bit like sort of ripples in a pond. You've got your now, which is the pebble dropping, but you've got to be aware of what the ripples are. But at the same time, I think that the interesting challenge in that is you need to set in train and be clear in managing your own initiatives, but you also need to maintain enough flexibility to be responsive to what might happen as a result of that pebble being dropped. things that you can't necessarily predict. So I don't think it's about percentages. I actually think it's an ongoing schizophrenic activity that you're operating in different time zones.
Yeah.